Welcome to a conversation with a community leader, sponsored by Leadership Kitsap. I'm Cary, the former mayor of Bremerton and Bellevue, Washington, and I'm your host for a conversation with a community leader. And today we have another great community leader, Jim Dunwiddie. Did I pronounce that right, Jim?
Correct.
And Jim is the director of the Kitsap Park Department.
Yes.
Correct? Welcome
Thank
to
you.
a conversation with a community leader. You obviously, your job and the people who work with you impact a lot of lives in this community every single day. And so I've always been interested in the Kitsap Park Department. I'm a big park advocate, and you and I have talked about that in our previous conversations, Jim. So before we get into park stuff, where are you from? How'd you get here? What brought you to Kitsap County?
Long story. I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio.
Really?
Moved across the East Coast.
Why'd your parents get to Cleveland?
Employment. My father worked for International Harvester and started out in Cleveland. And as he progressed in his progression, we moved along with him. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Massachusetts.
So you moved around a lot.
We moved a little bit in high school, yes.
Yeah.
It just happened to be that way. But I went to school at West Virginia University. I recently, well not recently, but I retired from the state pension system in New Jersey after 30 years.
What'd you do in that system?
I worked in local government in Parks and Recreation.
Oh, you did. So you've been a parks guy your whole life?
My entire career, yes.
Is your degree in park administration?
Parks and Recreation, yes.
Huh? I have a degree in education with a minor in physical education, and spent a lot of time working with kids most of my life. Boys and girls. I was a director of Boys and Girls Club for about 25 years. So can't have a better life.
No, you can't.
Yeah. So you kind of retired from West Virginia, and what brought you all the way across the United States?
I've always wanted to live out in this area, and I was looking at a job. Vancouver, Clark County had a combined position. I was interested in that position, and I heard little rumors that the county and the city were going to be splitting, and I didn't want to be in that type of employment environment. And just at the same time, the announcement for Kitsap County's job came up, and I was fortunate to be called in for a couple interviews and hired.
So how long have you been the parks director now?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
Wow. Well, that's quite a career. Move around a lot, worked 30 years in one part of the country. You've lived on both coasts. Do you like it here?
I love it here, especially the winters. Can't beat not the lack of snow.
I know.
Here, so.
You know, it's amazing, Jim. So many people move out here, and they stay. And I complain, and I'm one of them. I was born in Texas and came up here in 8th grade, and I've never left. But the winters still do kind of get to me. The grayness, where we don't see enough sunshine, right? So the winters are long here for me. They're not cold, and we don't have a ton of snow except for last year. But the grayness kind of gets to you. So our formula is you got to get out of here a couple times during the winter.
That's what I'm learning. But I was probably the only one that was interested in having snow last year, that I could go back to my roots and shovel a couple times.
Oh my gosh. And as a city, we hated having snow because the budget goes up because you got to get all those snow plows out there and all that kind of thing. So when I was having been mayor of a couple cities, hard snowy winters were expensive, right? And I'm sure for parks too. Okay, director of the Parks Department, been there 10 years. How big is the Kitsap County Park System? How many parks do you have? How many employees do you have? What's your annual budget? How big an operation you run it, Jim?
We have 73 park sites ranging from a tenth of an
73?
73 ranging from a tenth of an acre to 3,500 acres. We have close to 11,000 acres. We have 42 employees. Our budget's about $4.8 million, and we generate about $1 million in revenue.
Oh. The biggest park you have, and we can talk about this later, is the 3,800 acre park, Port Gamble?
Port Gamble Forest Heritage Park, yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting project. How did that come about?
Actually a consortium of quite a few nonprofits wanting to save a large parcel of property, and they had a willing seller. It's a unique situation that in order for that large of an area to be purchased, the value of the trees remained with Pope, so they get to do their forestry program, and then it reverts to the county full-time.
Right.
But what's really interesting in that park is there's only 10 state parks in the state of Washington larger than our parcel in Park
Yeah.
Apple.
Did the county hesitate in taking control of that piece of land? It's a big responsibility, excuse me.
No, it's purchased over a couple of years. You know, the resources of the community, I think, was really the backbone of making that decision. We're volunteer-based. The majority of our parks are actually managed and maintained by volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the success of the volunteers and the community involvement, was really a no-brainer to bring
Right.
that large parcel.
Are there? I'm a little aware of this park. There's some active volunteer groups that are helping make some decisions about the usage of that park, right?
We have a formal stewardship group there. We're
Right.
working with Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance on developing a ride park in a portion of that park.
Right. I went to a meeting one time and we talked about that park, and one of the issues that the group decided was that there ought to be a master plan for the future of that park. How do you see that evolving?
We're actually working through the Kitsap Community Foundation
Right.
with a grant application with the Kitsap Public Facilities
Right.
District of coming up with a master plan, tying in around the ride park, other potential uses of that property.
Because in my experience, what happens is you get a big park, there are a lot of special interest groups that are interested in having a portion of that for their activities. And so, and the process gets to be political. They go to the county commission meetings and they say, my gosh, we want a part of that for whatever their activity is, right? And then you never get a uniform vision and plan that makes sense.
Correct, and the infrastructure is never in place
Right.
to tie in all those different uses, yes.
Right. And it's such a great piece of property. So I hope that, my hope would be, as an old parks guy that served on the Bellevue Parks Commission for 15 years, that you come up with a good master plan. I hope the foundation, I think that was really smart on your department's part and yours to get hooked up with the foundation and seek these funds and hopefully come up with a good master plan. And my guess is, Jim, that master plan development will be kind of a public involvement process.
Oh, absolutely, and it also includes our park stewardship group, which are all community members, so they have been involved from day one, even with the grant application.
Yeah. What are the most, you got 72 parks. God, that's a lot to take care of. Wow. What are the most popular parks you have? Are they, I would guess sports fields are important. What else?
I think all of our natural areas, you know, the one thing that we don't do is count the number of visitors, but I think all of our natural areas, and as well as South Kitsap Regional Park, it's a developed multi-use park. Of course, we have the fairgrounds,
Right.
that we have tournaments, we have the special events at the pavilion, the fair itself.
Right.
That's probably our heaviest used and visited facility would be the Fairgrounds Event Center.
You know, one of the things when I've seen surveys of people, and I think we did one in Bremerton, about what they wanted in their park system, and trails always come to the top. People love trails, maybe for bicycling or hiking or walking, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was funny. The last about 2 years ago, we updated our Parks and Recreation open space plan, and we had a survey question that 1,200 responded to. Of here's 15 activities ranked from your top to your bottom. Natural areas, walking, biking, hiking, we're on the top. It was a little odd comparing it to about 15 years ago, where everyone wanted athletic facilities and developed
Right.
parks.
You know, when I was mayor of Bellevue, we developed a 20-acre site in the middle of downtown, the Bellevue Downtown Park, which is one of the things I'm most proud of in my public service career. But the community didn't argue, but the big debate on what should go in that park. And we did an international design competition, and it was amazing. We had 120 landscape designer people from all over the world, submit designs, and the one that got chosen by the committee was the one that had the least amount of activity on it. It was in the middle, a big grassy area, kind of like Central Park,
Right.
and a water feature that went around the park with a nice big waterfall. And there were groups that said, no, why aren't there, where are the tennis courts? Or where's the softball diamond? Well, they're not there. This is a peaceful green space in the middle of an urban center. And that park today is the most used park in the system, and it's surrounded by high-rise condominiums, and it's like the Central Park. So I think those kind of spaces are, when we live in these urban environments and people are busy, that they're quiet and they're walkable, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, you find most of the visitors actually like those multi-use, low-impact park developments because they can do a number of different things.
Yeah.
You go to a park to relax as well.
Well, my favorite park in Seattle is Green Lake.
Oh.
And I lived in Seattle a good part of my life. And going to Green Lake, it's a perfect walk. It's a circle,
Right.
and you know it. And it's almost 3 miles. And it's just a perfect walk. And you get all kinds of, you get old people and young people and children. And it's just like, it's the way society ought to be. And people are peacefully walking and jogging, and it's just a great park. And it happens to be on the water.
Right.
So I just love those kind of parks. I just think I can never think we have enough of them. You have a big popular space in your system called the Kitsap Fairgrounds and the Kitsap Rodeo. And you and I met a few weeks ago to work on where you're transitioning from the county Parks Department not owning, but running and managing the fair and the rodeo, and now you're developing it, in the midst of developing it as a nonprofit organization.
Right.
Talk to me about that and why you're doing that.
We had a study, and it recognized the competition of the resources within Kitsap County and the Parks Department as well. Our department has grown about 70% in the last 7 years in terms of park acreage.
Yeah.
So just the number of acres coming in here.
Let me ask you a question. It's grown 70%. Are you getting the people that you need? I shouldn't ask that because that's a hard political question. But so many times cities allow parks departments to acquire facilities and new land, but they don't support it with, this is my editorial comment, they don't support it with appropriate budget or people. They expect you to do more with less. And that's not the way the world works. So that's a scary number when I hear you've grown by 70%.
But in Parks and Recreation field, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But we are very fortunate to have a number of volunteers. Our volunteer hours are about 5 times the national average for a park agency. And what I always talk about—
Do you have a volunteer coordinator?
We have 2 volunteer coordinators. It's something that we really want to strengthen and support is our volunteers. So we've taken one position and we've actually divided into 2. That way we can do 2 work parties on a Saturday and not just one. But volunteers is really the backbone of our department, in addition to our staff. But you know, volunteers don't track all their hours. They don't spend all their time at the computer entering all their hours.
Right.
So you know, we do about 16,000 volunteer hours a year, and it's probably closer to 25,000.
But my experience my experience is volunteers still need to be trained and need to know what the expectations are for what they're volunteering for.
Right.
So they need to be managed in some way.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And we also recognize in most volunteer organizations there are about 5 or 6 individuals that do a lot of the administrative work and the organization, and then there's the other people that only have time to do work parties and things like that, which is fine. So you have to figure out a way to support both of those groups for the health of that organization.
Are seniors good volunteers, people my age?
Most of our volunteers are our age.
Oh,
yes,
are they?
and that's one of the other things.
You're not as old as I am.
Well,
Jim.
just, you know, they resemble the workforce, and
Yeah.
that's one of the issues that we have with volunteers is where are the new volunteers going to be coming in as we age out?
That's right. So back to the fairgrounds going nonprofit. Why are you doing that, and how do you see it working?
The success for the nonprofit is actually based on experience that a couple other counties have done where they've had a transition plan where it's not this county's out of the business, someone else pick it up. So we've been working over a year on a transition plan to make sure that this organization is up and running the proper way. We have been able to provide the resources for it. We've had a consultant work for over a year to set them up in the right way. The perfect example in Kitsap County would be the Haunted Fairgrounds. The Haunted Fairgrounds used to be a program within the Parks Department, and every year I was trying to figure out how was I going to buy materials for the program, and it got to a point, do I lay someone off to buy materials for Haunted Fairgrounds? So I met with that organization and said, hey, you know, the best thing to do is why don't you become a nonprofit? And all the money that you collect in terms of revenue, you can put right back into your program and not into the county general fund. This past year, they did about $120,000 in revenue. It's the largest program they ever had. So there's that success, and the success of the fair, it's going to be the community being involved and not so much the county being involved.
Mm-hmm. So will this be underway by next year?
Oh, absolutely. We're looking to have the nonprofit established by January, the middle of January. We're already meeting with the transition team to come up with the bylaws, how the organization is going to be structured, sample budgets, some of the professional services that are going to be required.
I know that the rodeo is kind of its own entity, more or less.
More or less.
I mean, there's a lot of people that love that rodeo, and they help out every year, and sometimes they're not looking across the street. I call it across the street to the regular big fair.
Right.
Will there be a separation there? Will there be two boards, one for the rodeo and one for the fair, or will they all be governed under the same nonprofit?
It'll be all under one nonprofit. Similar to actually how we have been structured within a fair and rodeo advisory board over the last couple of years.
Then what will be the role of the county at that point?
We'll be the landowner. We recognize that there's going to be a transition, probably a 3 to 5 year, roll out and roll in of that program. So the county will be supportive in some ways, but this will be turned over to a nonprofit. We'll be making an operational grant to them at the beginning of the year, and they'll have some funds to start with.
I think it's a great idea, and I think more parks departments ought to go to this kind of structure for some of their major activities. When I was in Bellevue, we built a big botanical gardens, which is quite well known around the country now. And we started managing it with over a period of time with a nonprofit group, and they have over 500 volunteers. And they raise all the money. They take care of the garden. The garden gets visitors from all over the world. And they wouldn't give that garden up if they had to. Right. It's part of their love, and so it's really worked out well. And I would think in lots of the activities you have that it could be done this way. So I think this is a really good experiment for the county, and I salute you guys for doing this. I think it's really good. And in the end, you get more people involved. You've got to kind of keep an eye on it, because nonprofits are like other groups. Sometimes, they could mismanage funds or they could do things like that. So it's still a responsibility for oversight. Right. But I think in the end, it's a good decision. And I know it's going to have some bumps in the roads for you, I'm sure.
Oh, sure.
And some nervous nights. But you're really giving up responsibility to a bunch of other groups. You've got a lot of buildings in the fairgrounds. I know you and I have already talked about this, but the county will continue to manage all those buildings except during the fair, right?
Absolutely, yes. We're looking to turn over the fairgrounds for about a month period, the month of August. Similar to what we do for the fair that we've been running, is just that we just stop all other activities because there's prep work and cleanup work, yes.
Now last year you did something kind of interesting. You let people in the fair free. Why did you do that, and how did it work?
Well, there was some examples in the study supporting the sustainability of the fair going to a nonprofit.
Because some departments, excuse me, are not doing fairs anymore around the country.
Quite a few.
Fairs are we're losing our fairs.
And that's unfortunate, because I think you're losing a lot of the soul of the community, because it's only 5 days, but it's a year's worth of work for the community being involved with it. So the we look for the fair to be really still a function of us. But
So why did you go to the free?
so the free.
Free.
Well, we had a management change as well. So Travis Buell, the assistant parks director, and I kind of became the fair managers again. And we looked at the cost of what it would be to bring a typical family of 4 in through the fair, and it was astronomical. And we also looked at
What were you charging?
well, it varied.
It
It varied
varied.
from $1 to $15, depending on
okay.
the times and the days.
So
and
it was a little pricey.
it was pricey when you look at amusement bands and food and things of that sort. So we looked at there was the revenue produced by ticket sales of about $250,000, and we started looking at how much we actually spent to collect that money, and the difference wasn't much. It was much of a wash. So we looked at a way that we could increase revenue in other sources, parking, sponsorships.
You're charging for parking, right?
We charged parking. We actually added $4 to it. We collected $60,000 more in parking. A lot of people liked one fee, not having to, every place they go have to pay another fee.
Right.
We also did it because we were in a position of collecting data of what it would be in terms of, in the past, it's been ticket sales as opposed to a free fare. And some of the other fairs that have gone to free experience about 115% increase in attendance. And we figure that with a nonprofit, no one in their right mind is going to say, I'm now in charge of this event, I'm going to give it away for free. So we were able to take that risk. We were able to collect the data to show that the number of people just was astronomical. Food sales, exhibit sales, carnival sales, parking sales all went up.
All went up.
And actually,
so you had more people come.
Absolutely, and it created some data where the nonprofit could go and negotiate different percentages off of the concession sales and things of that sort. I mean, free fare produced about $100,000 more in food sales in a 5-day period.
The vendors must love it when it goes up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they're going to continue free fare?
I think so. I think so.
Does that apply to the rodeo too, if you want to go to the rodeo?
No, there was a fee for the rodeo, but it was reduced, but most of the time that you had a combination ticket, which was the fair entrance as well as the rodeo. So the rodeo tickets were reduced by a couple dollars.
Well, it's a great activity for this county, and I don't know how many people show up. Is it 100,000 or 50,000 or?
Well, we've had, the last couple of years, we've sold about 30,000 tickets the day of. When you talk all the volunteers and that, you're probably talking about 75,000 people going in and out. Last year, we counted 61,000 people just through the gates.
Wow.
And because we had so many people and so many cell phones, our data upload and download stopped. So we're probably close to 100,000 people during the fair this year.
The fair and the rodeo, then we'll get off of this, is probably the biggest activity you have in the park system, right? I mean,
it was the largest community event in Kitsap County.
It's the largest community event. That's what I was going to say. Well, it's going to continue, and you're going to have a couple of years to work through the kinks on this thing, but I think you're going, my opinion is you're going in the right direction. I think it's a good thing. Let's talk about how you manage the park system. You have a Parks Commission. I know you're under, there's the county commissioners, and then there's other management people at the county. Do you have a Parks Commission?
We have an advisory board.
Advisory board.
Parks Advisory Board, consisting of appointees from each of the commissioner districts, and then Parks answers directly to the county commissioners.
Right. So what's the role of the advisory board?
The advisory.
A lot of park departments have park commissions, right?
Yeah, semi-autonomous. Yes.
Yeah.
From the agency I was with New Jersey.
Right.
That's how the structure that I operated with. But
Parks Committee or Parks Commissions. Yeah.
So the advisory
and
board
a lot of those have quite a bit of say in what goes on.
Yeah, the partnership that we've had with the advisory board has changed over the last couple of years. They've been becoming very involved in our policies and development of policies. We have subcommittees that we work with either with parks or visitor services. or community outreach. So they've been very instrumental in helping us. We have limited staff, so it's always nice to be able to pull 3 or 4 people in from the community to say, hey, we have this policy that we're trying to develop. What do you think about it? And we discuss it before we go to the advisory board.
Do you guys, the Parks Department, do a lot of grant writing and look for funds from various sources, state and federal, that fund parks and those kind of things? You spend a lot of your time doing that?
Not as much as we should.
Right.
There's not many grants that we qualify for in terms of operations. We do go through the state with the RCO office on some applications. The one difficulty we have is just the scale of our projects. They're smaller projects compared to some other municipalities and counties that are up to like $1 million in projects.
Do you have a park planner?
Yes, we do. Good.
I've always believed it was really important. We are getting down to, I haven't asked you half the questions I had for you. Let's see. Oh, a couple of parks I want to talk about. Chico Creek Salmon Park is one I really love and go and enjoy watching them. You're in the middle of closing that down and building a new culvert and making it environmentally better for the fish, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's a joint project with the tribe and Public Works.
Village Greens. You were struggling to keep that open, didn't know what to do with it. Golf business is a tough little business. You've got this wonderful little golf course up there, and somebody came and said they'd run it for you, right?
It took a while to find someone, but they found us, and yes, we're very pleased with the arrangement and being able to provide a community facility, not at the cost of the taxpayers, and our resources is terrific.
Yeah, golf courses are tough for government institutions to own. The goal is to not have to subsidize them, and sometimes that's tough. It's a tough business. You have a dog park?
We have a number of dog parks.
Oh, you do?
Silverdale, we have 2 in South Kitsap, yes.
Yeah, I'm a board member of the Humane Society, and I know a lot of pet owners. They're always looking for a place to walk their dogs and do that. And when I was in Bremerton, we built a dog park, and they're very popular. This is a dumb question, but do you have a senior center?
No.
No. I'm a senior. I'm not a big fan of senior centers because I don't want to spend 5 hours with a bunch of people my age. I'd rather be a multi-generational where I would never live in a gated community in Phoenix. Right. So that's interesting that we don't have a senior center, but I think it's a good idea. So is there anything I haven't asked you, Jim, that you'd like to say to the public about the county parks?
Public, I love the community. I love the involvement of the community in our park system. If it wasn't for the volunteers, we wouldn't have the park system that we do. We're very successful because of our volunteers, and I can't let out our staff. I mean, the women and men of our department are phenomenal. We don't do anything for credit. We just do.
Well, most people who work in parks departments are pretty passionate about what they do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, our staff is reflective of everyone else in that profession. You know,
Jim, you're a community leader. You're impacting a lot of lives in a positive way, and I really appreciate you being with me today. So this has been a conversation with a community leader, sponsored by Leadership Kitsap. I'm Cary Bozeman, and we'll see you next time when we talk with another leader in our community. Thank you so much.